Samson means literally sunshine. She named her son Sunshine. So later on, it's kind of funny when you come through it because Sonny over here was kind of a player with words and liked to do some things. And he played some names off of his own stuff here coming on, which we'll explain as we go. This is the backstory, and we'll go into some more fun stuff when it comes. Then the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him in the camp of Dan, Zor, and Eshtaol. So bring down. Samson's grown up. Samson has become a young man. Many years have passed, and he is now young, teenager, early 20s. Chapter 14. Samson went down to Teman and saw a young Philistine woman there. He went back into his father and mother. I kind of wanted Tucker to read this part for me, but I didn't ask him. I have seen a young Philistine woman in Teman. Now get her for me as a wife. But his father and mother said to him, can't you find a woman amongst your relatives or amongst any of our people? Must you go with the uncircumcised Philistines for a wife? In this point, it comes to a big issue where Samson knew as a Nazirite he was commanded to be clean. And to be clean, he would either have stayed celibate or he would have married a Jewish woman. And he knew this, and he decided to disobey it. It was his first step down the path to decay. But Samson told his father, get her for me. She is the right one for me. Bold. Now his father and mother did not know this was from the Lord, who wanted the Philistines to provide an opportunity for a confrontation. At that time, the Philistines were ruling Israel. Samson went down to Teman, and his father and mother came to the vineyard of Teman. Suddenly a young lion came roaring at him. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he tore the lion apart with his bare hands, as he might have torn apart a young goat. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Then he went and spoke to the woman, because she seemed right to Samson. After some time, when he returned to marry her, he left the road to see the lion's carcass, and there was a swarm of bees with honey in the carcass. He scooped some honey into his hands and ate it as he went along. Then he came to his father and mother, and he gave them some for them to eat as well. But he did not tell them that he had scooped the honey from the lion's carcass. So, because Halloween is coming up, and we're due for just a little bit of that, does anyone know how there was honey in a lion's carcass? Has anyone ever seen a honey or a honey nest built inside of one of those? Scientists have just recently discovered how this happened. There is a bee population that they said have popped up occasionally, but the most recent sightings has been in the Central America from the 1970s, where a swarm of bees called vulture bees, which are stingless bees, come in and secrete a solution that actually turns dead animal into honey. So Sam was literally eating dead animal honey. Happy Halloween. So yes, but it's true. You look it up online. They're called vulture bees. They don't sting. That's how he was able to just reach in and pull it out. Also, he was in a vineyard and he wasn't supposed to eat anything from a grapefruit too. So he was being bad going to a vineyard. The lion went after him. He killed the lion. He went back to the vineyard and they wanted to eat things and then eat honey from a dead animal. So not on a very good roll. His father went to visit the woman. Samson prepared a feast to them, as young men were accustomed to do. When the Philistines saw him, they brought 3 men to accompany him. Let me tell you a riddle, Samson said to them. If you can explain it during the 7 days of the feast and figure it out, I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes, which was a small fortune to them back then. But if you can't explain it to me, you must give 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes, literally clothes off their back. Tell us your riddle, they replied. Let's hear it. So he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, and out of the strong came something sweet. After 3 days, they were unable to explain the riddle. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, persuade your husband to explain the riddle to us, or he will burn you and your father's family to death. Did you invite us here to rob us? So Samson's wife came to him, weeping, and said, you hate me and don't love me. You told me the riddle, but you haven't explained it to me. Look, he said, I haven't even explained it to my mother and father. Why should I explain it to you? Probably not the way to start a marriage. She wept the whole 7 days of the feast. And at last, on the seventh day, he explained it to her, because she had literally nagged him so much he was on the edge of death. Then, those are, but if you look back in the original translation, it was nagged to the point of death. That is how the Greek translates. It's a good story, isn't it? Okay, hang on. I lost my place. Then she explained it to her people. On the seventh day, before sunset, the men of the city said to him, "What is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion?" So he said to them, "If you hadn't plowed with my young cow, you wouldn't know my riddle." Pretty sure those are grounds for divorce. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and went down to Asokan and killed 30 of their men. He stripped them and gave their clothes to them, who he explained the riddle. In a rage, Samson returned to his father's house, and his wife was given to the one who had accompanied him. Pretty harsh situation. He just got married and lost his wife all in a week, and killed 30. Out of spite. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and he went down. Later on, during the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a gift and visited his wife. "I want to go to my wife in her room," he said, but her father would not let him enter. "I was sure you hated her. After all, he called her a cow. So I gave her to one of the men who accompanied you. Isn't her younger sister more beautiful than she is? Why not take her instead?" Samson said to them, "This time I will be blameless when I harm the Philistines," because he realized he probably shouldn't have killed the other 30 guys. So he went out and caught 300 foxes. He doesn't do anything small. He took torches and tied the foxes tail to tail and turned them loose and put a torch between each pair of their tails. Then he ignited the torches and released the foxes into the standing grain of the Philistines. He burned the piles of grain and the standing grain as well as the vineyards and olive groves. Then the Philistines asked, "Who did this?" They were told, "It was Samson, the Tamanite's son-in-law, because he took Samson's wife and gave her to his companions." So the Philistines went to her and her father and burned them to death. This is racking up a pretty high body count already. Then Samson told them, "Because you did this, I swear I will not rest until I have taken vengeance on you." He tore them limb from limb and went down and stayed in the cave at the rock of Etham. The Philistines went up, camped in Judah, and raided Lehi. So the men of Judah said, "Why have you attacked us?" They replied, "We have come to tie Samson up and pay him back for what he did to us." Then 3,000 men of Judah went to the cave at the rock of Etham, and they asked Samson, "Do you realize that the Philistines rule us? What have you done to us?" "I have done to them what I did to me," he answered. They said to him, "We've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Then Samson told them, "Swear to me that you yourselves will not kill me." "No," they said, "we will not kill you, but we will tie you up purely and hand you over to them." So they tied him up with 2 new ropes and led him away from the rock. When he came to Lehi, the Philistines came to meet him, shouting. Then the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully on him, and the ropes that were on his arms and wrists became like burnt flax and fell off. He found a fresh jawbone of a donkey and reached out his hand and took it, and killed 1,000 men with it. Then Sam said, "With the jawbone of a donkey, I have piled them in heaps. With the jawbone of a donkey, I have killed 1,000 men." He was actually doing that while he was whacking them with the jawbone, because he was kind of boastful, and they just coming at him. When he had been speaking, he threw the jawbone away and named the place Ramathri, which actually means it means high place of the jawbone. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone. He became very thirsty and called out to the Lord, "Have you accomplished this great victory throughout your servant?" Will I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? So God split a hollow place out of it after Samson, and water came out of it. After Samson drank, his strength returned, and he revived. That is why he named it En-Hakkore, which is still there today, which means water out of the hollow. And he judged Israel 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Now, right there, you just about have the end of his time as ruling over the Philistines, but he still hasn't completed his end goal. We'll come here now to Samson and Delilah and the story of his ultimate inevitable downfall and how God was going to use him even through he is working to still fulfill his purpose. Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a woman, and he went to bed with her. When Gazites heard that Samson was there, they surrounded the place and waited in ambush for him all night at the city gate. They kept quiet all night, saying, let's wait until dawn, then we'll kill him. But Samson stayed in bed only until midnight. Then he got up, took the doors of the city gate along with 2 gate posts and pulled them out. How many of you guys have seen a big concrete gate post? The city gate back then would have been about 12 across, enough to let people walk past while carts were being pushed. He pulled up the gate posts that were to hold the gates up and the gates and threw them over his shoulder and walked them a mountain. It'd be like one of us picking up 4 pews, throwing it over your shoulder, and going for a hike. So think about how strong this guy really was. He pulled him on the mountain Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who's in the Shoric Valley. The Philistine leaders went to her and said, persuade him to tell you where his great strength comes from, so we can overpower him, tie him up, and make him helpless. Each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver, which is approximately $3,000. So she's doing all this for a couple $1,000, not a lot of money. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me, where does your strength come from? How could someone tie you up and make you helpless? Samson told her, if they tie me up with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become weak and be like any other man. Then the Philistine leaders brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and she tied him up with them, while the men in ambush were waiting in her room. She called out to him, Samson, the Philistines are here. But he snapped the bowstrings as a strand of yarn when it touches a fire. The secret of his strength remained unknown. Then Delilah said to Samson, you have mocked me and told me lies. Why won't you tell me how you can be tied? He told her, if they tie me with new ropes that have never been used, I will become weak and be like any other man. So Delilah took new ropes and tied him up with them and shouted, Samson, the Philistines are here. But all the men in ambush were waiting in her room. He snapped the rope off his arms like a thread. Delilah said to Samson, you've mocked me all over and told me lies. Why and how can you be tied up? He told her, if you weave the 7 braids on my head into the fabric on a loom. She fastened the braids with a pin and called to him, Samson, the Philistines are here. He awoke from his sleep and pulled the pin out with the loom and the web. Finally, she said, how can you say that I love you? She told him, when your heart is not with me. This is the 3rd time you have mocked me and not told me what makes your strength so great. Because she nagged him day after day and pleaded with him until she wore him out. He told her the whole truth and said to her, my hair has never been cut because I am a Nazirite to God from birth. If I am shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become weak and be like any other man. When Delilah realized that he had told her the whole truth, she sent the message to the Philistine leaders, come one more time, for he has told you the whole truth. The Philistine leaders came and brought the silver with them. Then she let him fall asleep on her lap and called the man to shave off his 7 braids on his head. In this way, she made him helpless, and his strength left him. Then she cried, Samson, the Philistines are here. When she awoke from his sleep, he said, I will escape as I did before and shake myself free. But he didn't know that the Lord left him. At this point, he has broken every one of the Nazarite laws, not to touch a dead animal or dead body, not to partake of wine, which we know he went to the vineyards and they all drank at their wedding, and has shaved his head. So the Lord has left him. The Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he was forced to grind grain in their prisons. But his hair began to grow back after it had been shaved. Now the Philistine leaders gathered together to offer a great sacrifice to their god, Dagon. They rejoiced and said, "Our God has handed over our enemy Samson to us." When the people saw him, they praised their God and said, "Our God has handed us over our enemy who destroyed our land and who multiplied our dead." When they were in good spirits, they said, "Bring Samson here to entertain us." So they brought Samson from prison, and he entertained them. They had him stand between the pillars. Samson said to the young man who was leading him by the hand, "Lead me where I can feel the pillars supporting the temple, so that I may lean against them." The temple was full of men and women. All the leaders of the Philistines were there, and about 3,000 men and women on the roof watching Samson entertain them. He called out to the Lord, "Lord God, please remember me. Strengthen me, God, just one more time. With one act of vengeance, let me get back the Philistines for my two eyes." Odd note, he's doing it himself, not for God or for anyone else. He still hasn't learned why he's actually serving here. Samson took a hold of the pillars supporting the temple and leaned against them, on his right hand, on one on his left. Samson said, "Let die with the Philistines." He pushed with all his might, and the temple fell on the leaders and all the people in it. And those he killed at his death were more than those he had killed in his life. Then his brothers and all of his father's family came down, carried him back, and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of his father. So he judged Israel for 20 years. Powerful story. Was Samson a good guy? He did good. Did he mess up a lot? Messed up quite a bit. We have more records of the times he screwed up than the good things he did. And even the good things he did, he was a lot of times doing just because he wanted to prove his strength, i.e. using the jawbone of a donkey to fight with. And he spent all of his time working to prove that he was the best and not that he was taking no heed to covenant with God that gave him the ability to do the things that he did. So guys, you can come up. But this story tells us in this day and age that no matter how many times we screw up, we are all set apart from God. We live in a different age than he did. We live after Jesus came. Jesus came and indwells in all of us that accept him, believe in him. We are uniquely called to be just like that. We are called to live a better life and to do the right thing for God and not just what is right in our own eyes, which is what Samson did. He lived his whole life doing what was right in his eyes, but God took what was right and made it happen through Samson.